we're not allowed to really communicate. And we exchanged, a few words, between the two of us nonetheless. And Ahmed told me very quickly, they've got us. And I asked him, what do you mean? Well, he said, there's stuff in the car, right?
Where was this now? At the police station?
This is at the police station.
Yes.
We're sitting on the bench. We were being told not to speak, but we managed to communicate a little bit. It's very quick, very quick. Now, whilst this is happening, Klein is on the phone, and I got the impression clearly he was phoning the security police, not any other ordinary police. He was phoning the security police, right? Phyllis kept a watch on us outside the reception area. He kept a watch on us and constantly told us the same thing, play still, right? Let me put it this way, Your Lordship. I was very afraid. I was extremely afraid. And I also want to add, Ahmed was extremely afraid. We were extremely worried now. I knew what we had done in the past. I was unaware of what was actually in the car now. But I took on trust what Ahmed told me at that moment, that there's something there. Right? And I will explain that later.
Yes. Now, when you say that there were two policemen on the roadblock, were these the only policemen?
No other policemen, those were the two.
So after they traveled with you, I take it there was no roadblock anymore?
That was a roadblock.
I mean, after they arrested you?
Yeah, we are going to the police station. I don't know what
there was nobody else to...
Whether the man that roadblock with somebody else, I wouldn't know.
Yes. Right. But then did you or had you discussed your trip with anyone before going where you were going? Had you discussed your trip?
Okay. No.
You had not?
No.
Okay.
We did not, Ahmed did not, I don't think he informed anyone about where we were going, nor did I inform anyone. Neither did we inform, he didn't inform, for example, his family. This was our style of living.
Yes.
Friday nights especially, and also some other nights, but Friday night in particular, we would go out and we were just usually just enjoying our free time.
Right. Now, at the police station, what happened? Who came in after the telephone call? Okay.
Not long after the calls were made by Sergeant Klein. He made several calls, I can't tell you exactly how many, but security police came in. They were non-uniformed. When I looked at them, I could obviously make out the way they behaved, and I know more or less what security police tend to talk about and how they look at things, etc. So just from the style of and the behavior at that moment, I could work out they were security police. They weren't ordinary police. They were not in uniform.
Was it your first encounter with the security police on that day?
This was, in my lifetime at that time, the first encounter with the security police. Okay. As far as I know, Ahmed had never encountered the security police either before.
Okay, then what happened?
Now, Ahmed was immediately, there were two security policemen who took Ahmed to the back. So you've got a police station at the front, there's a reception desk, you come in from the Ondeka's side, there's an entrance there. If I face this way, for example, this is Ondeka's road on my right, and this is the entrance, and this is the reception area. And if you go at the back, there is an exit at the back into a yard. Right? They took Ahmed somewhere there. I don't know where they took him, but they took him somewhere there while I remained seated. Right? I was then handcuffed on my own. Then, very quickly, two other security police came. I was then unhandcuffed and escorted by them, held by them in fact. I'm taken by a passageway to the back again, and I'm taken to the left-hand side. On the left-hand side, there was a small building standing apart from this building, right? So and there was a kind of a corrugated iron staircase going up, and I'm taken up that staircase onto the first floor, right? And then taken into the room there, which to me looked like an office. Okay? There was a desk there, there was a chair there maybe having 2 chairs, and I was asked both in English and Afrikaans, where were we going? Who were we going to see? What are we doing tonight? That night, what were we doing that night? So I explained where we were going. Now, where we were going was actually, we were going to go, we had an erratic night. We had seen different people that night. And at that morning, we decided we were going to go to Fordsburg and have a snack or a light meal in Fordsburg, which was a common place to hang out for Indian and colored people in particular. Right? So there were cinemas there were small restaurants, and nice little bistros, whatnot, and you could always eat there. That was our aim. We were a bit hungry by about that time, and we were just going to go there. So I explained, and they said, no. Don't tell us, using the word starting with an S, right? Tell us the truth. So I said, well, I'm telling you the truth. We're going there. We were going there, to Fordsburg. We're going to have a snack. Okay, not long after that, I get a punch in my stomach, a very hard one. I've never been punched ever in my life like that, never. I mean, I'm not a sort of a guy who ever at school or, even after school, got into brawls with, friends or something, or, did any kind of fist fighting. So I'm never used to that sort of thing. I was more kind of a studious type, if you like, a bookworm, if you like, to some extent, right? So I'm given this terrible punch, and I'm really knocked out almost. I've never had this punch. It was a massive punch, with this guy, and I can even give you the names. But later I identified the names. There was Captain Furi, and or was it I forget the titles. Okay, I'll just say Furi, right? And Van Dijk, right?
Were you standing? Were you standing on your feet, or were you sitting?
I was standing on my feet when they gave me the sponge.
Handcuffed?
No, I think they removed the handcuff by then. Okay. They removed the handcuff.
Yes.
They then took my glasses off. I used to wear glasses. My eyes were reasonably good, but I used to wear glasses. And they put it on the table, and then started giving me a number of slaps on my face. Very, very hard, severe slaps. And, as it were, I was seeing stars, if you like. These were very hard slaps.
Were they the only 2 policemen in that room?
In that room, they were the only 2.
There was nobody else? There was
nobody else. It was Furi, and they locked the door. Furi and Van Dijk, right? They literally were rough-handing me, knocking me out. I would say it was an assault, a serious assault, perhaps not what one would call, systematic torture at that stage, right? What I describe in my affidavit as torture proper or intensive torture. At that stage, I think it was, I would say, a very serious assault. But it knocked me out. It made me feel very uncomfortable. And they were after, basically, what they were after was information. Two security policemen, right, rough-handling me, messing me up, and I'm totally disarmed. I'm not too sure what's happening. So this goes on for a while. I can't give you the exact time, but I would say, at least the interrogation and the assault going on for probably about half an hour, maybe longer, right? I'm not feeling very comfortable by now. I don't see Timol again there, right? I don't see Timol again. And I'm then escorted by these 2 security police officers. The 2 officers escort me back to the reception area. By this time, there's a very senior security officer who has arrived, Colonel Piet Gele, right? He has come there, and he started congratulating, first of all, Kleins and Finnies for making the arrest, telling them like something to the effect like, very good work, you guys are great or whatever, right? And then he tells the other two security officers, I think the ones who assaulted me, they leave from there, right? I don't see them at that moment again in that station. They leave. Colonel Klein then tells Klein to escort me to his car, which is an unmarked police car, right? Tells Klein to take me to the car, he's following, and I'll seat me at the back and handcuff me, obviously. So I get handcuffed, he takes me, and I think he handcuffed me again in the car. I'm sitting at the back, and then I'm driven in the car with Klein sitting at the back, me sitting next to him, right, handcuffed to him, and Colonel Klein drives the car to John Foster Square. So that's the next part.
So at that stage, you had not seen Mr. Timol in...
No. After we were separated from the bench and Ahmed was separated from me, he was taken to the back, probably out to the right, I was taken to the left in the yard. I don't know where they'd taken him, but I did not see him at that stage at Newlands Police Station again, at Newlands Police Station.
Did you ever see him anywhere else again?
Right. I saw him once when I was being interrogated in the vault on the 10th floor in room 1013. There is a vault adjacent, leading from the office into, the vault comes off the office, right? And it has this, bank type, high security door,
Yes.
right? It was there was the bulk of the torture that was inflicted on me happened. Now, the security officers who did the torturing took turns, right? And they would work in shifts, so they would be there 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours at a time.
Yes.
They usually work in pairs.
Yes, you will tell us more about
The activities.
I just want to know
Now,
when next did you see
They
him?
would, in other words, at different stages, open the door.
Yes.
At different. At one moment, when they opened the door, I was standing more or less in the middle. I could see the door, and if you just imagine that just beyond that door there, that is the vault, right? The first panel there is the vault, and that's the door. Now, if you can imagine, this is the entrance to the office. This panel here, or this one here, is the entrance to the office. I'm standing in the middle somewhere, and I can see right across like this. Okay, I can see right across, and I see the security police. There were two officers escorting a man in the passageway. There was a toilet area. So now, if you take, this is the door. Beyond this is the passageway. This is the passageway.
Yeah.
Beyond these panels is the passageway, and the direction in which Ahmed is being escorted were two men sort of holding him by his trunk, more or less, somewhere there, moving him, and they're passing the door. I could see also that the walk that Ahmed was having was not a natural walk. He was like dragging his feet, and they were holding him and pushing him. He was obviously not in a fit state to walk normally at all. They also had a hood over him. Now, how would I know that was Ahmed? Well, if I looked at that person, and my memory of this is absolutely vivid about this. His height is that of Ahmed. I knew more or less, what he looked like, from the side, from his body. You could put a hood on someone, right? And I think you can still identify the person.
Was he wearing the same clothes you last saw him?
I think so, but if you ask me today, what exactly were the clothes? It would be hard for me to recollect. But I would say he wore pants, and a shirt.
certain at that moment that it is Mr. Timol?
I am certain it was him.
And if I know this may be difficult for you to recollect, but it was after how many days that were in detention when this
happened? I am detained from Friday evening, okay? So I presume from the time I'm at Newlands police station, I'm detained. But I was never, by the way, read out my rights, right? Never read out my rights. I think even then, even under the apartheid system, police did read out, your rights.
You were never told.
I was never told that.
Under what law you have been detained?
This is the law we're detaining you under, or
yes.
You are arrested for questioning or for as somebody we want to charge you for about something, or I was never told anything at all. The whole thing just is brutal from the outset. It's like attacking you, hitting you, but not telling you anything about what they're doing. They're not telling me we are arresting you under this act. They're not telling me what my rights are as a person being arrested. Okay. I'm not even told I'm a detainee yet.
So it was more or less after how many days?
Okay. So I am then taken to John Foster Square. Initially, I'm on the 9th floor in Colonel Greiling's office. We'll talk about that later. At the dawn of the day, when the daylight breaks in the morning, I could see from Colonel Greiling's office the light changing. Around early in the morning, 2 new officers come and they escort me from his office to walk in the passageway on the 9th floor, which is a bit of a distance to the stairwell. It's not an exactly parallel, if you look downwards, to the office I was eventually taken to. So I mean, from his office on the 9th floor, I'm then escorted by these 2 security officers. I am asked to go up together with them on the stairwell, and then we climb the stairwell. We then land on the 10th floor, and the office I'm taken to is very close to the stairwell. There's an entrance into the passageway, and it's not too far away. And between the 2, there are toilet areas. There's a kind of one area where there's a basin, and there's another area where there are toilets.
Yes, you'll show us that when we do the inspection in loco tomorrow.
Yeah. So
what I need to find out from you now is, can you recollect as to how long were you in detention when you saw this person you say was Mr. Timol?
Right.
How many days could it have been?
Now, I was trying to keep count of days.
Yes.
Remember, I'm in this vault right through from Saturday morning, and the door is all, when people are not moving in and out, the door is closed. Right? It's this big security gate, metal, heavy stuff, like a bank vault type gate, right? But every time the door opens, I'm checking the light. I did try to keep count of the days, but I cannot give you an exact date. Okay. So my assumption is, in terms of what I could say about like how time elapses, that my sighting of what Ahmed Timol was probably Monday.
Following the Friday of your...
Yeah, so Saturday morning I'm there. So Saturday whole morning, Saturday whole afternoon, Saturday evening I'm being messed up there. Sunday the whole day, the whole thing goes on, day and night, non-stop. Monday sometime I cite this.
Okay.
And I am absolutely sure up to today, the person I saw there, in spite of the hood plate being placed on his head, from the type of walk he had, from his body movements, from his size, I'm sure it was, Ahmed.
And did you ever see him again?
I never saw him after that, ever. That's my last sighting, and it was a brief sighting, right?
Yes.
You can imagine somebody struggling to walk, and there's this door open, and he's just passing. And I was, all the time in my head, I was thinking, where was Ahmed? What was happening to him? I even expected at different times that they might even interrogate us together, right? So I was having this expectation of meeting him again, but I never got to see him again.
When did you hear, and from whom did you hear that he had passed on?
Okay. During my detention, the whole period of detention, right? And at the time when I was in John Foster Square, because my period of being in John Foster Square was from about, say, just after 1 o'clock on Friday night, that's the 22nd of October 1971, to about 11 o'clock when I've totally collapsed. I'm in a coma, I'm near death. Okay? And which is when they call a doctor, right? Now, sorry, what was the question again?
I wanted to know, when did you learn that he has passed on, and from whom?
In that period when I'm at John Foster Square, I am never told, the persons who could have told me anything about Ahmed's death whenever it occurred would be a security officer. At that place, I was never told, and I was not told about what was happening to him, okay? I was then taken to hospital, and my memory of my hospital experience, I was taken first of all to Johannesburg Hospital, which at that time was near the fort. And then very quickly after being there, I was rushed to Pretoria, Hendrik Vervoet Hospital. And I was not in a good state of mind. I did not have full consciousness. My memory is very hazy about what happened in the hospitals. After the hospital in Pretoria, I was moved to Pretoria Central Prison, to the hospital section of that prison. I wasn't put in the hospital section as such. I was taken to obviously the black section of the prison. But next to the hospital section, there was an office, a small office building with normal windows facing the courtyard outside. You could face the courtyard this side, and there was a door, like a passageway on the one side. And I was placed there, and that's where I spent the initial part of the detention. I was never told by anyone in that prison. I was moved later to a cell upstairs in the central prison, right? Pretoria Central. In Pretoria, I was never told that Ahmed Timol was dead. Never told by anyone. There was a 24-hour guard on me, right? So during the day, it's the normal prison officials who are guarding me. But at night, they had a special uniform guard coming. And they took different shifts, I guess, different nights, different uniform guards came. And they sat outside. The guys sometimes they were told not to play and bring music or anything, but occasionally the guy had something. And nobody ever told me anything about Ahmed Timol there. When I was taken to the orderly cells, in the main section of the prison later, right, I was never told that Ahmed had died. So the only time I came to know that Ahmed had died, when I was brought to Johannesburg, back from Pretoria, I was brought to John Foster Square, and on the 7th of March. And on the 8th of March, I was going to appear in court, in the magistrate's court, right? On the 8th of March. And early in the morning, I was taken out from the solitary confinement cells, right? I was taken out from there. My parents had sent clothes. The police had requested that they should send clothes for me to wear when I appear in court. So they had sent the clothes, and I wore those clothes. They were given to me by the security, police. And we were then put in a queue of people. And one of the persons I met in the queue was Mrs. Amina Desa, who apparently was also detained straight away after our arrest. And she was also detained at John Foster Square. She was a very elegant lady, elderly lady, and I knew her very well, and Ahmed even knew her better, right? Remember, she treated him like a trusted son. She looked at me and she said, she was told during the interrogation that Ahmed was a big man, and that she doesn't know what's going to happen. And she told me a little about how they had roughed her up and tortured her a little. I don't think it was anywhere near the torture that I went through, right? She was a very dignified woman, well spoken in English. She also spoke Afrikaans, right? Very educated woman, right? She used to wear cosmetics, and I think she wasn't normally wearing her cosmetics that morning, and she looked really pale, ghostly, I would say. And she had no knowledge about Ahmed's death. So I asked her, do you know anything about Ahmed? I suppose we'll see him later. She says, yeah, yeah, we should see him later. Something like along those lines, right? I then came to the magistrate, they brought us to the magistrate's court. And
when was this, the 8th?
This is the 8th of March,
yes.
1972. So I've already been in detention for a substantial period of time. We come to the court, and I am allowed to see my family. So my father is there, my mother is there, my sisters are there, right? I am allowed to see the counsel my father had hired. So I have the attorneys, right? And there was the attorneys Sayed Kachalia and Ismail Ayub, right? He was at that time an article clerk, and later he had more significant cases to handle later. They told me that Ahmed Timol was dead. And did I know that? And I said, no, I was not aware of that. And actually, I must tell you, I was very devastated to get that piece of information. I just felt like, something's going to be missing here. Ahmed knew a lot more than me. Ahmed was responsible for whatever was in the car. Ahmed was a person who was in contact with people in London. I knew about that he was contacting people in London, but I didn't know who he was contacting, and it wasn't my business anyway. That's how we operated. So I was extremely worried, but just the news of his death devastated me. I thought, couldn't be. I had to actually sit back and sort of take note of this and just reflect on this.
Okay. Mr. Vani, I think you can now take over from the time Greyland took him from Newlands, what he went through. I think you can take over from there and lead the witness through what happened to him during detention.
Thank you, Lordship. I'm indebted to the court. Your Lordship, before I forget, and to help put you in the picture, and we will obviously have a pointing out tomorrow, but in volume F, there is a pretty good photograph of the view from the vault, the site of Mr. Esop's torture, looking through the open door to the passage.
On what page is it?
It's not numbered, unfortunately, but it's photo 182.
182.
Towards the back of that document.
Okay.
So that photo, Your Lordship, is of the office outside the vault, taken from the vault door, looking at the corridor, which is the point at which Mr. Esop said he saw.
Oh, that's from this, yeah, okay.
Mr. Timol, yes.
I see it now, yes, thank you.
Mr. Esop, if I can take you back to your arrival at John Vorster Square, and as his Lordship has indicated, he has your affidavit, he has read it very closely. Regrettably, time doesn't permit us to canvass every single last detail. We have to, though, focus on, sadly, the torture that you sustained at John Vorster Square. He mentioned that you arrived at John Vorster Square, that you were in the basement and you were taken up to the 9th floor, and you ended up in Colonel Groeling's large and spacious office. And according to your statement, the assaults at John Vorster Square started quite soon thereafter. Could you commence at that point, please?
Okay. into Colonel Greling's office. Sergeant Klein is with us. He accompanies us. And we are inside the office now. And Greling is sitting behind the desk. Greling, and Klein is guarding me. The door is closed, and I'm questioned about various things. Where are we going? Some of the sort of questions: who we're going to see, what were Timol and I up to, what were we doing with stuff in the car, right? Questions along those lines. He is also on the phone as he's questioning me, phoning a whole range of security officers. That's the impression I got, right? Telling them, and at some point he's also talking about that they had now got a groot vis, a big fish, right? And he's being told, he's telling the officers over the phone that they need to come and they're going to carry on with the investigation. He then tells Klein, look, he's just going to go out. I don't know where he was going to go. And he asked Klein to keep a guard on me. Now, before he goes out of the office, he tells Klein that Timol and I were the same sort of guys who were responsible for killing South African soldiers, Afrikaner soldiers, I guess, at the borders. That we were responsible for, ultimately also responsible for the deaths of South African soldiers dying in warfare, if you like, right? Guerrilla warfare, whatever, right? And so when Klein is with me alone, he had a kind of a typical Afrikaner look. He was extremely well built. He was a young man. He had kind of a reddish skin, blonde hair, and he looks at me. He doesn't say much, but I think all his fury and anger was aroused. He was obviously provoked, in my view, by Greling, by the statement that we were these dangerous guys who were responsible for the killings of soldiers, right? In the end, I guess, right? So Klein, he was so enraged, he just went on a wild spree of assaulting me. I used to wear, as was the fashion then, long hair. I used to always wear fashionable clothes, right? And he just got mad. He was not part of the security police. It wasn't systematic torture, but he just got mad. And he just, thrashed me, threw me to the ground, kicked me, slapped me, whatever he could do to assault me, right? And I'm really disheveled, and I'm there, and at times I'm on the ground. He's picking me up, and he starts going wild, right? And then Greling comes in not long after. He sees me lying on the ground, and he tells Klein, das is genoeg. It's enough. Ik verstaan. I understand. Right? I got the impression he's telling him, I understand why you're so enraged. But what you got here are dangerous guys, or at least this little guy here, me. I'm this dangerous guy, and you've done the right thing in my view. That's the impression I got by that statement, I understand. Right? So, Greling then tells Klein, it's fine, you can go. You can go. He discharges Klein and thanks him again. Klein goes out. I never see Klein again. Right? Very soon after that comes this quite beefy security officer. He doesn't say anything. Greling keeps on the questioning, right? He keeps on questioning me. This guy, he sits on a chair, looks at me, in a very fixated way, and then he puts his foot, the front of his foot and sometimes the back of his heel, right, the bottom of his heel, and presses my feet in the front. I was wearing still shoes, right? He presses hard, then knocks it, thumps me. Krailing is observing this, okay? Okay, then Krailing says, okay, he's going out. So Krailing goes out. This guy then, this is a security officer, starts the torture proper. It's the initial phase in this room. Colonel Krailing's office, right? He starts the torture. Well, he tells me, go on your knees, go sit on your knees, right? Something along those lines. I cannot give you exactly every detail in the proper sequence, but I will tell you from memory, right? I may have to look at my affidavit,
yes.
right? But he then, slaps me in all kinds of directions, from all kinds of directions on my face. And then he, punches me also, right? He also throws me to the ground. He lifts me by my hand. Actually, by this stage, Klein had already managed to actually pull out tufts of my hair. My hair was relatively long, going over my ears. Already pulled, but this guy does it even more viciously. The tufts of my hair are coming out, and I can see my hair on the ground. Right? I can see that. And then he throws me, he actually lifts me. He was a strong guy, bigger than me, far bigger, probably maybe close to 6 feet or maybe even more. I'm not 100% sure what his height was, but he can lift me up. So he lifts me, and then holds me in a certain way, throws me to the ground. At one stage, he even throws me on the ground where I'm landing on my head, and this is devastating, right? Then he comes back to these knocks, like on my face. At one stage, he gives me such a knock here on my right side, just on my temple here. It's devastating. I'm actually, my eyes suddenly go, and I can't see now in my right eye. My vision is gone. And I'm just wondering, and I was a medical student, I'm just wondering, God, has my, eyeball become dislocated? Has the nerve, going into my eyes, become separated? And I'm absolutely worried, and I'm in terrible pain already. And I can't see with my right eye. And I'm thinking, I don't know what's happened now. I know this guy's, really hit me hard, and he's knocked me here on the temple. And I can't see, and I'm thinking, God, this is awful now. Anyway, Krailing comes in again at different times, I think. And he's not there when the actual torture is happening. He's not there. He tends to excuse himself from the observation of torture at that time. He's excusing himself each time there's, torture inflicted. But he comes in at some point, and anyway, the whole thing carries on till the morning. So there's questionings from around, I would say about after 1 o'clock, maybe 1:30, between 1 and 1:30, questioning going on in Colonel's training office. At some point, this guy comes in, he's then, Klein has already assaulted me there, and then comes the, initial phase of the, torture proper, and this is what I described has just happened, right? And then I am told by Krailing then tells that I'll be taken from there to the office, to someone. 2 officers come in. So this other guy, the security officer, is then discharged. 2 security officers then come. They lead me out of his office, right? Then they take me along the passageway. So we walk. The passageway is a fairly big distance, right? We walk along the passageway. We then ascend the stairwell. I'm, held. We ascend the stairwell. We come up the stairwell. It's kind of a spiral thing. We come up. We come to there's a door on the 10th floor now. We go through the door, and on the right, not far from the entrance and the stairwell, there's the entrance here, a little that side, on the right, is this office. I'm taken into this office, and then I'm escorted in, and I'm not taken to the office for any kind of question. There's no friendly check there. There's no
Sorry to interrupt, Mr. Esop. On the stairwell, was there any exchange?
Yes.
Can you briefly tell us quickly?
I was told at that stage, there were different exchanges at different times, but at that moment I think I was told that, how many floors are there down there? How many floors can you see? could die from here down there. You could go right up. I was just told that at that stage. Just told that.
Okay.
Right? I did look, by the way. Right? I know it's 10 floors already. I'd seen the lift. I'd seen the marking, the lift sign inside. I knew we were on the 9th floor, and now we're on the 10th. And but we are there in the vault now. We're in the vault.
And please proceed to tell us what happened in the vault, in particular, any abuse you sustained while there.
Okay. I'm just going to have a little drink.
Please take your time.
Okay, I'm just going to also look at the affidavit.
And if you wish to sit down, Mr. Esop, you're also welcome to do that.
Yeah. I used to do a lot of lecturing, by the way. I've lectured for many years in different countries, right? And I don't remember sitting down when I lectured. Okay. So I'll be perfectly happy to stand, unless I can't. Okay? Okay. Okay. Now, I'm not going to give you this in any great sequence, okay? But I'm just going to take you through what happened. I may have to refresh my memory by looking at the affidavit.
That's fine.
Okay? Now, I'm taken into the vault, and during the whole duration of that I'm in the vault, duration of time of my being in the vault, there are different things that are done to me. There are a whole range of torture methods used on me, right? There's numerous methods, and some are extremely severe, and some are not that severe. But I would call the whole experience as torture proper, and for me, it would be the middle and final phases of torture proper, right? It's very intensive.
Just to give us a sense, do you want to give a list of the types of torture you sustained in the vault, and then we can talk about some of them?
Yeah, perhaps not in the proper sequence, but sure. I can give you a list, definitely. One of the things they did to me was take a bag, a plastic bag, put it over my head, somehow tighten it, and then suffocate me. So I'm hyperventilating when my head's in the bag, and I don't see properly through the bag. My eyes are not functioning also too well, at least my right eye. They're not functioning too well. They had removed my glasses, okay? They never gave me my glasses, except when they asked me later to write a statement. So they put this bag over me. At times I'm standing, at times I have to be kneeling, right? And it is a nasty experience, and I didn't know what they were going to do, whether they were going to, throw water over the bag or what. I don't know. But anyway, it just went on for quite a while, and it did make me hyperventilate, and I did feel that, I could suffocate due to a lack of air, right? I could suffocate. Okay, so that's one method. There was another method which I was told, I think this was in Kreiling's office already, I was told about something about a mule kick and about mule kickers. And I'd never heard that term before. I don't know what a mule kicker was. I don't know what a mule kick was, right? And they just told me, just you wait, you'll see what we mean, okay? So that's another method they used on me. Basically, there are different people who executed this method, right? I was asked to sit on a chair. Now, I looked, there's obviously no chair, so obviously what they implied is that I had to simulate sitting on a chair, right? So I go in a kind of a half squat position like this, right? These two guys, and one of the guys who did this was Furi, the same guy who had assaulted me and introduced the torturing at Newlands police station, right? But the same guy. Different people did this, but he comes in here with another guy, and they stand on side of my whole body, if you like. I'm in a semi-squat position, right? Pretending to sit on a chair, no chair, obviously, right? And then they deliver massive kicks on me. Sometimes with the heels like a mule would do, and sometimes with the fronts or sides. On both sides, continuously. Okay, so they do this. At times I'm like collapsing, and they would lift me, so I'm standing again, right? They would lift me up, I'm going down, and they would lift me, and then they'd start again. Sometimes I'm standing now and they deliver the mule kicks. They also deliver punches, right? Massive, punches with their fists, on my thighs too, right? Sometimes hitting me, on my trunk, right? And this is becoming, quite severe now. I'm feeling the kicks terribly. I can feel the pain, but what is happening, I notice, to my body as the time drags on, and this is going on for quite a long time, I would say, my legs are stiffening.
Were they asking you questions?
Yeah.
As they did this?
The questions are asked, but they're not too worried about interrogating me, if you like. They just torture me.
But did they indicate to you what is it that they want to hear from you?
At different stages they do. But when they're doing particular, when they're executing particular torture methods, they're not too bothered about the questions. My, feeling was that they were torturing me in the most severest way possible, so that when they start questioning me, I'm, somebody who just blurt out everything.
But from the questions, did you get a sense that there's something that they want you to say to them?
They want me to say, were we seeing somebody that night, or a group of people that night? They want me to say that what was found in the car was something that I know about, and can I give them more information about that? Oh yes, one little detail I forgot, by the way, and this is where, when I was in Grading's office, my keys for my home, and I used to carry my locker room keys at a locker I had at medical school at the University of Witwatersrand. I used to carry that in my pocket together with my keys, and they were confiscated, and obviously my personal details were taken, so they had my address, telephone, etc., and they'd gone to the house. And they searched the house, obviously, and they'd gone to my room and my study, and they brought back a box, a little brown carton box with envelopes in it and a list of addresses. And that was presented to me by Grading after a security police officer delivered that to him. He questioned me about this. Do you see this box? He says, do you know about this box? And I said, maybe, something along those lines. I think so. And he says, we've opened it. There's a list of addresses. Do you know anything about it? Then I looked at it and I seemed to identify the box. Timol had supplied me that box because that was one of in the list there, it was a list we had used for addressing the envelopes and posting leaflets. And he had asked me to keep that box. I kept it in my room, right? Now, so that had already happened. So now, when I'm in this interrogation room again, in this torture chamber, as I would call it, right, in the vault, I'm asked again these questions, those about the lists. I'm asked about Ahmed's connections, about his friends, about my friends. Who are my friends? They want me to make a list. They want Ahmed. They want me to give all the names and addresses of people Ahmed knew, right? And I give more or less what I know about myself, right? I just say, well, I know people at medical school. I know students. I know a few teachers, right? Along those lines. But I'm not, and the thing is, the way we had operated, there couldn't be names I could supply. For example, one of the persons who had collated the Nkululeko newsletter #1, which was issued in 1971 to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the South African Communist Party. Well, I couldn't even supply his name. I didn't know he had done this work. That's how Ahmed worked. He got other people to do small tasks. I couldn't supply any names. I couldn't. I didn't know anybody who might be politically connected with us or who might be, say, significant in the investigation the security police were undertaking. How can I supply that? I can only give them names of friends I had, right? I could give them names of, say, maybe even the people we visited the very night we were arrested, right? Right? But that's the sort of, and they were ordinary friends. They're not politically involved with us. They're not. They don't really know what we're up to, but they are friends. But that's all I could give. So that's what I'm hammered on all the time. We want names.
And did they give an impression to you that there is something that they want concerning you? In other words, any charge that they were contemplating insofar as you were concerned? Did they give a hint in their questions?
At no stage am I told under which act I'm being detained. At no stage am I even told that I'm being detained, that I may be assisting them in their investigations. I'm not even told that. It's just questioning and torture, right through.
Okay. Mr. Vani.
Thank you. Mr. Esop, at some point during what you refer to as torture intensive or torture proper, you were taken to the bathroom?
Yes.
If you could just explain what happened in that bathroom and whether one of the officers raised an incident with an earlier detainee.
Okay. I mean, various torture methods are used on me. I've described two, and I'll describe more later. And I'm taken to the, I mean, obviously I need to go to the toilet at times, right? And I had a very pressing moment. I wanted to go to urinate. And I asked them, look, I need to go to the toilet. But they also wanted to take me themselves, because by this time I was bleeding. My nose was bleeding. I was bleeding from my mouth. There were marks on my body, and my shirt was, the buttons were coming off, right? My trousers were messed up. I had blood on me. I had my own blood on me. So I'm taken to the toilet area where there's a urinal, and I, have a pee there. Then there's a room very close by, and there's a kind of a, silver metal basin, and I'm taken there to wash myself. They tell me I must wash myself, and I must wipe myself off. I wipe off all the blood that is on me. So, and there was some kind of mirror there, and I looked terrible. It was like, with my hair all gone in all kinds of directions, some actually gone out of my head, they're pulled out. And I'm looking at this sort of ghost-like character, and it's me. And it's frightening to look at yourself in that state, right? I'm looking at this character in the mirror, and I'm thinking, God, yeah? And then I wash myself. I'm still not feeling very good. They then bring me back into the vault. But before they do that, in the toilet area, there is like a fan light on top, fairly large, right, going across. And they say, you see that? They say, Babla Saluji? I said, yeah, I heard of him. You know what happened to him? That's the next question I was asked. I think I know what happened to him. You will have the same fate. I'm wondering what they're saying, right? And Babla Saluji was obviously a political detainee in the early period, right? And in the early 60s, I forget the exact year, and it was at Gray's, which was the previous headquarters of the security police, not John Foster Square, not the 9th and 10th floors, which are now the security police headquarters. And he had been, as far as everybody knows and everybody believes, thrown out from a window somewhere at the top of the building, and he died. And everybody in the popular consciousness in the country, everybody knew, that the police killed him, right? That was the feeling amongst people. So when I was told this, I know what they were saying to me, right? And obviously, I don't feel too good, right? Now, at that moment, and also later, and I'll talk about this later, look, I came from a very religious family. My family wasn't as religious as Ahmed Timol's family, right? In fact, Ahmed's father, his first name was Yusuf, but there was always another name put in front called Haji. And Haji is like a holy man, right? And he was a holy man, very holy. Ahmed was religiously minded too, but I would say Ahmed and I were very casual about religion as the years went on, right? We have obviously grown up in a kind of a Muslim, family. We live in a kind of a community, and there's a culture around religion, in families, in communities, and we abided by a lot of things, but we weren't exactly, religiously minded, right? Or great practitioners of Islam or any other religion, right? So when I'm told this, and I realize that already I've been messed up to some extent, and I'm going to this toilet area, it is amazing. Even if you have a casual approach to religion, just all the prayers you have learned in your life start coming back, right?
Mr. Esop, if we can now return to the vault.
Okay.
You've already informed His Lordship about certain torture methods that were applied to you. Your statement is actually quite detailed on what in fact occurred to you, and since you've already mentioned some of these, we're not going to cover that ground again. But in terms of your statement, you do speak about the plastic bag method. You do speak about standing on one leg and raising your hands high, which exhausted you. You spoke about the squatting, the simulating the chair, and of course the forceful punches and kicks you sustained while in these different positions. Before we move to what you have referred to as the final phase of torture, is there anything you wish to add?
Yes, I would.
Which perhaps is not in the statement?
No, I would elaborate on what is in the statement.
Okay.
And I would go through some of the points raised
briefly,
in the statement. So another method was, you've mentioned the thing about standing on one foot and letting you do that for a long time, or even lifting your hands up and standing in that position with one foot on the ground. And then doing squatting endlessly, and they don't want you to do a full squat or half squat. So you sort of keep on doing it endlessly. It's I don't know how many I did, I can't obviously remember, but a very long time, but your feet are really tired, right? Your legs are very tired, your knees are obviously aching now when you do too many squats like that. But a very severe method, which I think they've used on many detainees, was electric shocks. And I'd like to go through that. Right?
Yes, and as I understand it, that actually took place in what you refer to as the final phase of
No, it's not exactly the final phase,
right, but
it's probably near the final phase.
Okay.
Right?
Please go ahead.
Right, so the electric shocks, remember this is the security officers are working in shifts. Different people coming in at different times. Right? At one stage, I think 2 or 3 people came in, there was a box they brought in, some kind of box. A suitcase type, something, right? And they had prods or wands or something with it. It looked like a very clinical operation to me. I don't know what they were going to do, but they had a chair brought in, right? They strapped me up, right? And they took these devices, wands or pods or whatever, and start applying shocks to my thighs, electricity flowing from this box and machinery, whatever they had there. And remember, I'm not in the best frame of mind, right, at this stage, and I'm not in a good state to really examine everything. But the electricity is going through my body, and the voltage is stepped up, right, and I'm feeling very disoriented. I'm almost like I'm floating, and it's excruciating, the pain, and just at the touch of that, just the touch. I mean, I don't know if anyone has ever experienced shocks in this room like that, but it's lethal. And it's long-lasting, right?
Take whatever time you need, Mr. Esop.
Yeah, so I've already gone through the mule kicks, legs are stiff, I'm having these electric shocks, and most of the time I think it was on my thighs, but I think a little on my trunk too, and it's just excruciating, the pain, right? Okay, so that's another method, and this is long lasting, yeah?
Indeed.
I should mention to my lords, right, that there's very few questions being asked at this stage. I'm not being questioned. I'm just simply being tortured, right? I think in particular the period of the electric shocks, I can't even remember questions being asked. It's just doing this to me.
And Mr. Esop, if they weren't really putting that many questions to you, what did you think the main purpose of this approach was?
Okay, I think the idea was to break completely, where I'm so broken that any information I might have had, which I didn't want to divulge, I would come up with. I mean, I know, and I've read many times about other people who even with lesser forms of torture inflicted on them would break down and literally, blurt out everything they knew, and as the police would like to say very often, sing like canaries. Let me put it this way, I am strong-willed, right? Even if I sang like a canary, I had very little to sing about, right? How much information did I have that I could give them? Would it be relevant to them, right? I knew friends, I did work with Ahmed. There was nobody else who I worked with politically in the underground. I worked with Ahmed. Yeah, I could tell. Yeah, Ahmed did this and I did this. We did it together. I could say that, and I did, and so did Ahmed. Talk about me, and I talk about Ahmed.
But in fact, Mr. Esop, they did want you to write out a statement.
Yeah. So, okay, I would say they were trying to break me, and they couldn't break me. But then the next thing they did was they wanted me to write a statement. They said, okay, we want you to write a statement. Tell us what you did. Tell us everything you know about Ahmed. Tell us everything you know about the ANC, everything you know about the South African Communist Party. Anybody who's political, anybody who's done anything you might have done yourself in school, in university, that's of a political nature, tell us. And write all that in your statement. So I looked at them, and by this stage, you know what? I'm just fed up, right? And I said, look, you know what? Look, I'll make it easy for you. You write a statement. You put what you want. I'll sign it. Put what you want, right? I did have the feeling of daring them. I said, put what you want. Do what you want if you want to, right? But so they said, no, we don't want to write your statement. You tell us the statement. So what they finally did, okay, they take me out of the vote. It was the first time I'm taken out of the vote. The other times I've been taken out was to wash myself, remove the blood on me, for example, and to go, urinate.
And did you have a sense of time? You could now see out the window?
Yeah, I could, I suppose. I cannot exactly recall now. I know I wrote my statement more or less when it was dark. Okay? Because remember, the doors now and then, right? Now, I was taken to the office in the front, and there was a bigger table there and chairs. It was an office. And I was seated down there, and they were guarding me. Put the papers and some pens there, and said, okay, write. It was a lined paper. So write. I reached out for the pen, and then suddenly the two talked and said, no, take him back in. Take him back in. So they didn't want me to be there. I think they were worried something could have happened. This is, I would say, fairly early in the piece, right? I would say probably, Sunday, Monday, right? I'm asked to write the statement, right? Okay. I go, they take me back to the office. They bring in a small table, probably about 18 inches wide, 20 inches wide, right? And a normal chair, ordinary chair, right? They bring it into the vault and ask me to sit down, put the paper there, put the pen there, write. Okay? So I look at the paper, I stared at the paper for a while, and I was thinking about it, and I said, okay, let me just put down something. So I write stuff which is very innocent, right? About, me being a medical student, about my activities with the University Student Bursary Committee, or things like that. Anything I could remember that was, and that I knew Ahmed, that we had done a little bit of political work or something. I'm not saying very much. I'm not saying that I went to Jeppe Street Post Office a few times with Ahmed Timol and posted. I'm not saying that I posted leaflets from Johannesburg on my own at different stages. I'm not saying that. I'm not writing that. Right? I decided I'm not going to write that. If they're going to feed me that information, I might write it. They did feed me some information as time goes on, and then I'm thinking about well, maybe I'll accommodate them along those lines. So if they want to please them or something. So I'm trying to write a statement, but I'm not volunteering information. I have that strong will in my head. I'm not volunteering information. If you're going to bring information to me, I will write. I write a whole lot of stuff. Now they read the statement. As I'm writing, they finish. I wrote about 2 pages. I think I wrote about 7 pages, right? They read 2 or 3 pages and they look at it and they said, no, nya. Using the normal Afrikaans swear words, they throw at me. They tell me I'm writing shit, right? And we're gonna fix you, right? A whole barrage of all kinds of swear words come out. We're gonna fix you. I think they got the sense that I was daring them, right? And they didn't like it for that reason, that I wasn't volunteering. As I'm writing the statement at different stages, they do have this to and fro between my cell and other cells, and they bring in information which I know only Ahmed would have known. For example, the posting of leaflets at Jeppe Street Post Office. Nobody would know that, I can tell you. Nobody would know that. This is done casually on weekends, or even if I'd done something, and Ahmed had written that already in his statement, it seems. Right? I don't know that. But they come back with information of that sort to me. Now, I must tell them more. Obviously, I realized they do know something.
So it was clear to you that Timol was being interrogated simultaneously?
It was clear to me, I think, during the interrogation process, for Timol, for me, I think we shared interrogators, right? And there was a to and fro. So they would get information from me, bring it back, right? And then ask me to elaborate further.
And approximately how often would the interrogators be changed or rotated?
I would say at times 2 hours, at times 3 hours, at times 5 hours. It's not any fixed time. You could feel it that a particular set of interrogators were doing it for long. Okay, I did write my statement. I finished it, I think, more or less almost completed. They were absolutely unhappy with my statement, absolutely. And they just told me, you see what we're going to do to you. Anyway, they decided to cool off themselves. They brought in another interrogator. This was a kind of a mild-looking man, perhaps not too elderly, but probably in his 50s. Nicely spoken, very civil manner, right? not like the interrogating officers I had already experienced, right? Very different in demeanor. And he comes there, and they close the door. He looks at me. This is one of the few times when I'm with one officer. He looks at me, and just remains quiet for a while. And then he tells me after a while, "I want to help you." And I'm looking at him. He says, "Look, you can go home. You can go to your father's home very quickly. What you need to do is something very simple. Cooperate. Just give us the truth. Just tell us what you are all up to. Tell us what Timol and I were doing. Tell us that, and I promise you, you'll be home. I promise you," he tells me. So I look at him. Now, I know he was using what I would call the soft touch. Look, I just took it in the way we talk in Britain. I wasn't daft to believe this, whatever I want to call it, right? I wasn't daft to believe him. But what? I'm going to start telling him because he's using the soft touch, right? So I tell him, everything I've wanted to tell you guys, as security officers, I've told you. I cannot add anything more. Okay? He says, "Look, you've got a chance. When I leave this room, it's not going to be the same for you again. It's not. It's not going to be the same for you." So he carries on. I think the soft touch approach lasted for probably about maybe 1.5, 2 hours. It's kind of a break nonetheless for me, right? I suppose it's another way to break it, to get information. And I'm not budging as far as I'm concerned.
Yes.
I'm not budging.
And then another security officer entered.
Then another security officer entered, and now back to torture. Because this guy has done his work. He goes, I don't see him again, by the way, not this guy. He was not involved again in the interrogation, and I don't think he tortured me again. He was not involved in torturing me as such, or even interrogating me later. Another guy comes in.
Please describe the torture that then followed with the new officer.
Yeah. There was one guy, I think he wore a red top, and it was a bit tightly fitting, and he had because it was tightly fitting, and he was probably a bit on the fat side, so his paunch stood out, if you like. And so he, assaulted me, tortured me, beat me up, and so on. And at times he would say, cooperate, or just give us the information we want. Then he also asked me, what do you do with obesity? How does one handle obesity? And being a medical student, I said, well, I suppose what you need to do really is be very sure of the food you eat, right? And make sure you don't overeat, and you go into healthy food eating. And the other thing is you need to make sure you have a reasonable number of days when you do exercise. And so he says, he looks at me and he says, you know what? When you want to give us irrelevant information, you're very good, huh? You can tell us all the shit that we don't want to know about, but you want to talk about that. Well, that's not what we want, huh? What we want is the real stuff. And if you're not going to, cooperate, we'll show you what we do to you, and I'll take you further. So he messes me up badly. And I'm not sure exactly the sequence, but the next form of torture is this. Okay? 2 officers. I think they took me to the toilet. I'm not in a good state of mind. I'm not functioning well. I'm taken to the toilet to urinate. And as we come out from the toilet, and we're supposed to go back to the office, right? But we do not go back to the office. They take me through the door in the passageway to the stairwell, right? They're holding me all the time, and there's a rail where you see 10 floors down. Okay, so the stairwell goes something in a kind of a, close to a circle form. It goes right down, and you can see all the different rails at different levels. And as you see from the top, obviously in terms of size, they look a bit smaller down. Right at the bottom, they look a bit bigger at the top. So they say look down. So I look down, and obviously you can see you could fall right down. They say you could go down. And I was wondering what they were saying, meaning. So they said, look down. So I go down again. And then suddenly, they lift my body up. Strong guys. I'm not very heavy at that time, by the way. And I've never been, right? Very heavy in weight. So they lift me up, hold me by my legs, right? And they catch me around, my calves towards my knees, both, and I'm held like this, upside down. And they tell me, we're going to drop you now. Now, I must tell you at this stage, I am in a very bad state, physically. The psychological, experience of torture is already, impacting on me. I'm feeling devastated, but forget that. The physical impact is just so tremendous. I'm already gone through all this electric torture. I'm in a terrible state physically. I've gone through this mule kicks endlessly, and I'm in, I'm just not there, functioning properly, right? I can't even be, if they try to interrogate me in a friendly way, I'm not too sure I could be interrogated. But holding me up, and this is a little while now, they're holding me up, threatening me with being dropped right to the bottom and landing right down, perhaps hitting the stairwell at different points until I land right at the bottom.
Were you, during this bout of interrogation, were you provided meals regularly or at all?
Yeah. Can I just finish this part of the torture, and I'll talk about the meals, if that's all right with you, my lord?
Yes,
right?
yes, you proceed.
I'm held there like this, and I don't feel comfortable. And actually, I must tell you honestly, and I've written this in my statement, I was in such pain if they dropped me at that moment. It would have been fine. I have a strong will, and if they wanted to kill me at that moment, fine. Right? I would have been dead, and I wouldn't say I'd be happy, I wouldn't be alive, obviously, but I wouldn't have bothered. And actually, I felt they were going to drop me. Anyway, they did lift me up. They brought me up again and took me back to the boat. Now, coming back to your question, my lord, about food. Well, they did feed. I was hungry. They didn't bring water. At one stage, when I was going to the toilet and coming back, I noticed on the long table in the office a bowl of sugar cubes. I took a cube or two. I was hungry, right? I took a cube or two and managed to hold it and put it in my mouth. And I just felt I needed something. I was also drying up. I was not given water, I must tell you that. So apart from any other form of torture, I was also, subjected to food deprivation. Now, at one point, they did bring in food. They brought in some very badly cooked meat and some, mealie meal, pap, right, as we call it, right, in South Africa. They brought in a little of that and a beaker. I suppose this is what they had fed prisoners who were kept there at the bottom, at John Foster Square. So they brought this grub, if you like. But I was in no state to eat the stuff. I looked at the stuff and it didn't look very, but I couldn't face the food. And I did try to eat a little, especially the pap. it's something I didn't eat before. I looked at the meat and I wasn't too sure and I didn't feel like eating it, but I might have had a bite. And I did drink some of the water. There's the first time and the last time when I was at John Foster Square that they fed me something. First and last time.
And sleep? Were you given chance to sleep at some point?
Chance to sleep.
To sleep
No.
at some point.
So I would say I went through this food deprivation period, right? This is now a number of days, and the sleep. Well, let me put it this way. I never slept from the moment of arrest, right? I was never allowed to sleep. There was never anywhere I could sleep. I was asked to sleep on the ground or a mat, nothing provided. There was no mat in the room, nothing. No mattress, nothing. I was never allowed to sleep. But I should say, I did lose consciousness a few times. Right? I cannot recollect exactly how many times, but it was a few times when I literally blanked out. I couldn't, I just went off. Every time I woke up, I was wet. There was one time when I woke up, when I noticed, or maybe even twice, I noticed these officers who I couldn't even now see properly, right? They were urinating on me. They were urinating. This, I must say to the court, for them, what they were doing was like a sport. Yes, they were, interested in protecting the apartheid state, right? And they were acting in the whole name of national security and whatnot, right? But they were laughing. They were laughing. I mean, to urinate on a detainee collapsed to the ground who's just being revived, right? I felt unconscious many times, and if you ask me if I slept, maybe that's the time I slept. That's the time I slept, when I was unconscious. And I don't know for how long.
My last two questions for today. You said you were admitted at the Johannesburg Hospital and later at the Hendrik Verwoerd Hospital in Pretoria. What was that about? Why? How did it come about that you be admitted? For what problem?
How did it come about? Before I collapsed totally, I did go through one guy who was perhaps more callous, more savage than any of the other torturers. He also used the mule kicks, right? But he was absolutely savage, right? He was a real brute of a man. He didn't care what happened to me. He also, felt like he was above the law. He could do what he liked. He was authorized to do this as far as I could see, right? He was a master torturer. He was trained in torture methods, and he executed a whole range of them, including the mule kick. And I collapsed under his watch a good few times. Now, I think this was the final stuff for this guy, right? He also told me he was a nice guy and he had a family and all that sort of stuff, right? But he was going to break me completely. And I got the impression he was going to kill me, right? And after that event, I must say I collapsed totally. I was near death, right? Everything started looking hazy. I couldn't really even focus with my eyes anymore. I should mention, by the way, my eyesight did return on my right eye, right? So I wasn't damaged, I think, right? It took probably by Sunday or Monday, my eyesight did return. When I was writing the statement, my eyesight was reasonably okay, both eyes, okay? But at this stage, when I'm really near death, and I'm almost in a semi-coma, I can't really focus. I don't know what's happening now. Right? I can't even think. I can't even think like, do anything you want to now, or kill me, or whatever. I can't even think anything. I'm actually just going. I'm just going. The lights are out of me, so to speak. Right? And I am there in the vote. I know that. And I have momentarily a little bit of regaining of consciousness, and I'm dozing off, and it goes on like that. And then at one point they bring in a doctor. All right. Later I come to know this was Dr. Kemp. He was a district surgeon. They bring him into the vault. I remember that distinctly. I was still had that much consciousness. I'm going off and I'm coming back, going off, coming back. And they examine me, but I'm going off again. And he's examining me. And he says something, I don't know. Anyway, later when I read the report, he claimed that I had self-inflicted wounds on me, self-inflicted. And secondly, that I was in a state of hysteria, or I was simulating hysteria, whichever way he wanted to put it, okay? As far as I know, I was a goner, I was finished. Right? I was almost dead, right? I think what happened was that they had reached a point, they had gone to the point of torturing me where they'd exceeded all the limits of restraint, right? They had gone too far. I think they were trained to, use torture, but, to use it to some extent with restraint and to use different kinds of torture on different people and stop when they think it was going too far. But I think they'd gone almost absolutely too far. Now, I'm in that bad state where I can't now even focus, and I'm actually, everything is very hazy. I'm then, this is not something I can confirm in terms of my own consciousness, but from the reports I read, I was taken in a police van or in an ambulance, I can't recollect, but in the document, this is all documented later, to General Hospital in the Indian ward, because in the General Hospital they had a private Indian ward always, right, for a long time. And they take me there because that's probably a more safer area, because they could put a guard there, and it's kind of a very private area, right? So they take me there. This is not something I know myself, I learn about this later. I am examined by doctors, watched by nurses, the security police are there, and I'm under constant guard outside of that room where I'm kept. Very soon, on the same day, I am then rushed to HF Fairfoot Hospital in Pretoria. This is some distance, and I'm, let me put it this way. I don't know why they take me to Johannesburg Hospital and then rush me to HF Fairfoot Hospital. I would say that I was in such a bad state, I could have died by then. But they rushed me to HF Fairfoot. They conduct a series of medical examinations with all kinds of specialists, pathologists, neuropsychiatrists. A lot of nurses look at me, etc. Later, my father on the Timol dies on the 27th, according to the police, and on the 28th he brought a case against the police for torturing me. So the case was against the Commissioner of Police, and so he was the first respondent, and the second respondent was Colonel Craven. He brought the case, and Justice Margot heard the case, right? And this was on the 28th of October, and my father literally won the case. And Justice Margot ruled that, and this is noted in legal literature, right? That that I should not be interrogated or tortured or assaulted, or any kind of pressure should be applied to me, something like that, right? He ruled. Now, okay, I am rushed to, I don't know about this, by the way, I don't know. So I am rushed to Pretoria Hospital. Later, when the reports come out, the doctors claim something similar to what Dr. Kemp had claimed, including the specialists. They claim now that this was all to do with hysteria, that the wounds were inflicted. My father had come to the hospital with journalists. He got a call, an anonymous call on phone, and he got this call somewhere, and he carried on with his business after my arrest, right? He got this call, and somebody mentioned to him, whoever this caller was, this person, that I was the person in Pretoria Hospital, right? So he had already hired lawyers. He had a journalist, Mike Norton, working with him, and this is all documented. There were lots of newspaper coverage of this too. They rushed to the Pretoria Hospital, and my father, in his evidence, and he wrote 2 affidavits, right? He reported that he came to the hospital, he asked about the whereabouts of me, gave the full name, etc., and they said they had no record of such a person. The matron said that they had no record, and he tried to move around, eventually somebody told him something like that, pointed something, and he went somewhere and he managed to go somewhere, climbed on something, and there was a fan light he could see, from the fan light, and he then, told Mike Norton, and later the case, my father's counsel at that time was E.C. Maisels, who was a QC, and Advocate George Missos, right? And they helped my father with the affidavit, and they confirmed what he had seen, and they presented this evidence to Justice Marble. That my father reported that he saw me on a bed, that I had blood on my chest, that there was a bandage below my navel, that I had extreme difficulty in breathing. When affidavits were later taken by my legal team, the attorneys in particular, Syed Kachalia and Ayub Ismail, they took affidavits from various nurses. The nurses reported that when I was brought in, they had a very sick man. That somebody there was one nurse who even reported that this guy was not going to pull through. This guy was not going to pull through. Their evidence contradicted, in my view, the evidence of the specialists. I would go as far as to say that some of the doctors, who did examinations of political detainees and who were invited by the security police to examine medically, detainees, right, were colluding with the security police, and they were, together with the security police, staging a massive cover-up. I would say that the very doctors, they all broke the Hippocratic Oath, that doctors are, you take the oath and you are, obliged to actually save lives, to help people, no matter what they are, whatever their religion, whatever their race, their class, their political beliefs. You are supposed to save people, to treat people when they are injured. They saw my injuries. They saw I was in this, devastated, hopeless condition. And for them to write that this was a case of hysteria, I would say that could only happen if there was a collusion between the security police and the medical establishment, not the whole lot. There are very good doctors in the country, very good judges too, but this lot who collaborated with the police, right? And I would say this is the sort of thing that happened in other countries too.
Now, can you recall how long were you in HF Vervoer? It's now, by the way, it's no more. It's called. It's not HF Vervoer anymore. I think it's what is it? Tambo.
Pretoria Academic one.
Pretoria Academic. Yes. They now call it Pretoria Academic Hospital.
Oh, Pretoria what, sorry?
Pretoria Academic Hospital.
Is it? Very nice name.
That's what it is called now. For how long were you there?
I cannot tell you that.
You have no idea.
Conscious knowledge I might have of it.
Yes.
But there are records,
Okay.
in the police files and with the court records as well. When my father brought the case, because there were two hearings. Initially, it was Justice Margo, and then there were two judges who sat again because basically the security police's case was that they wanted to review the case, basically to abrogate Justice Margo's decision.
Yes.
Right? And whether this should be done or not, and there was a second hearing, but it was still upheld, and the decision was upheld that I should still not be interrogated. So I cannot tell you because I'm not in a good state of mind then, but I do know that I came to consciousness fully when I was in Pretoria Central Prison, when I was in that office which was then converted into like a bedroom, right, with a metal bed and a mattress put in with grey blankets and sheets too, by the way, right, a luxury for prisoners, I would say, right, and then I was slowly recovering there, I would say. It took me a month to recover.
Did you receive any visitation during that time?
No visitation from any members of my family, from lawyers, none whatsoever. The only visitation I had was prison officials There was a chap in charge of me called Captain Sneerpel. He was in charge of me personally in the Pretoria prison. And the other visitor I had was the medical doctor, who was an Afrikaner man, and he occasionally visited. And a few times a magistrate came, and he would say, look at you very sternly. There were two phrases he used. Any complaints? Any requests? Well, initially I just looked at him, I never said anything. As he made a few more visits, he didn't come very frequently. One of the days I said, yeah, I have some requests. So, took his book out. Okay, tells me what are your requests? I said, can you get me some religious scripture? I want the Bible, both the Old Testament and the New Testament, and I want the Quran, right, in translation. And can you get me that? I knew that this would be non-controversial, right, that I could request this, and I didn't want to have it, truthfully, right? So he noted it down. I wasn't given anything until late, and I'll go through it later, I guess, right? But the visits then were prison officials, the magistrate, the prison doctor. That's it. No other person. And there was one other visit. Should I mention that? Another visit. I was kept in that prison hospital section. I mean, not exactly in the ward, if you like, but in this office which was converted to a bedroom. There was a normal window facing the courtyard. And later I was transferred to the main section upstairs on the first floor in the main building, right? In a cell where I was alone. Somewhere in February, I was taken to the administrative section, and I was told by Captain Sneerpel, he escorted me together with a warder in prison, that they had CIDs who wanted to speak to me. So I had to come along. So I went. There were two CIDs. They had the ID card. It was the first time, by the way, I had ever given any identity. It was the first time ever I'm shown any identity. This is documented in the court records, their names. I can't remember offhand now, but all the names are recorded. They told me there was an allegation made by my father in court that I had ended up in hospital, in HF Vervoed Hospital, and that I was there because I was tortured. I was assaulted and tortured, and they were investigating if there was something like that had happened. So they were part of the CID. They were doing a criminal investigation, they told me. And they asked me that they wanted me to make a statement of anything that I had experienced, with the security police, and they would then take the statement away from me. So I sort of reflected on this, and I looked at them, and a question dawned in my head very quickly. I said, yeah, I would like to make a statement, but let's agree on one thing. I'll make the statement if you let me speak to my father's lawyers. I didn't know who the lawyers were at that time. One of the lawyers is sitting here, Mr. George Bezos, right? I didn't know who my father's lawyers were, right? And so I said, yeah, let me speak to my father's lawyers. Yeah, you're keeping me in prison, I know. Bring one of my father's lawyers, and I'll make the statement. But I need to check with my father's lawyers first, before I say anything. I need to speak. So they said, no, we're not too sure we can do that. We are investigating a crime. You can make your statement with us. They said, okay, look. So we had a relatively long meeting, probably more than an hour. And they were very civil, right? And they said, okay, look, if you want us to come back, speak to Captain Sneer, and we'll come back. Well, I never called them back. I never told Captain Sneer I want to see them. You know, I had made my condition, and if they wanted to, accept my condition, I would have been happy to proceed. Right? So that's the last visitors I would say I had.
Okay. Thank you. Stefania, I think it's...
Thanks, Your Lordship. I'm indebted for the clarification. Your Lordship, I'm just keeping an eye on the time.
Yes.
You'd indicated that you wanted to adjourn at 4 p.m.
Yes, the witness is still here. We can continue tomorrow, not so.
Yes.
Yes, I'm sure he also needs time to go and look at a statement. If overnight you could look at a statement and see what is it that you left out, something that can perhaps rekindle your memory. And tomorrow you can still be of assistance to us.
Okay. Your Lordship, can I just add one little point here, because you would ask me about sleep. So I would say that obviously I went through the whole period with sleep deprivation, right?
Yes.
So I would say if you think of it from Friday evening right till Tuesday morning, about 11 o'clock in the morning, it seems, from the reports that the state presented later, that I was rushed to hospital. It's a long time, right? So the sleep deprivation right through.
Okay. Yes, and...
Your Lordship, just to give you an indication that in terms of tomorrow morning, that
yes.
I think that I conclude with Mr. Essop.
Yes.
Roughly between 30 and 40 minutes just to type some concerns.
Yeah. Then Mr. Pretorius will probably have a few questions to raise. That will probably take us to lunch. Then 2 o'clock we go to John Foster Square. Has arrangements been made for inspection in local?
Your Lordship, I can confirm that arrangements have been made. We have been given an undertaking that all the relevant officers and vaults will be open.
Yes.
And they also kindly offer to reconstruct room 1026 as closely as possible to what it looked like in 1971.
Yes. Okay, fine. We will go there tomorrow at 2. And we'll probably be there the rest of the afternoon.
I would think so.
And then on Wednesday morning we'll be here. You have another witness to present.
Your Lordship, as matters stand, we intend to call Advocate George Bezos SC
On Wednesday? Yes. Okay, fine. Okay, very well. Then let's adjourn until tomorrow, 10 o'clock here. And then we'll take it from there. Yes. Thank you very much. You'll be here tomorrow, 10 o'clock, Mr. Eso.